Hey there, welcome back. When it comes to managing the whirlwind, nothing may be so important as to learn how to manage your inbox. As you well know, the sheer volume of electronic communication that the average professional has to deal with has gotten out of hand. According to McKinsey, the average professional spends 2.5 hours a day, nearly 30% of the workday, on email, processing anywhere between 80 and 120 messages a day. Yikes. So, to cope, most professionals adopt a strategy somewhere along this simple spectrum. On one end, extreme vigilance. You constantly monitor the inbox and dispatch new inbound messages with speed and ruthlessness. Like a sentry at the gates of the castle, nothing gets in or out without you knowing. On the other end of the spectrum, extreme indifference. You've raised the white flag, admitted defeat, the gates of the castle are wide open. The inbox piles up and up and up with unread messages. Both of these strategies are problematic. For the email indifferent, it may be obvious. You're both missing important information contained in some of those unread emails, and perhaps worse, every time you look at your inbox, it may fill you with some combination of despair and defeat. For the vigilant, it may be even worse. The compulsion to clear the inbox means that you're inevitably spending too much time checking or thinking about checking your email. The end result? Less time spent on the deep, career advancing, breakthrough enabling work that you really want to be doing. But there is some good news. These are solvable problems. In this video, I'm going to share with you a few tried and true guiding principles when it comes to reducing email overwhelm. And then a few specific best practices that the best leaders use to reduce the distractive effect of electronic communication. All right, let's dive in. Guiding principle number 1, be intentional. As with all things breakthrough, the first step is to simply define what does better look like. In other words, how much time do you want to be spending each day on email? Remember, the whirlwind thrives on uncertainty, on ambiguity. If you aren't crystal clear about how much time you can or want to spend reading and responding to email, then it's going to be very unlikely that any of the following strategies are going to stick. The first step in creating the kind of clarity you need to really take control of your email overwhelm problems is to start with some data. Specifically, measure how many emails do you send and receive each day. In addition, how much time do you spend reading and writing emails? And then, again, most importantly, what does better look like? For most of us, a 20% reduction in both time and volume is easily achieved. That can mean over an hour of time given back every day to invest in more important activities. Now, if you're thinking that sounds great, but I'll never make it happen, have no fear. Later on in this training, I'm going to show you some specific strategies to improve that efficiency. Now, if your lizard brain just popped up and said, yeah, that sounds great, but it won't work for me, I get it. I promise that later on in this training, I'm going to show you some smart, simple strategies that can improve anyone's email efficiency. But it all starts with intentionality, right? This first guiding principle, be intentional. The second guiding principle, clarify expectations. A recent survey of 700 professionals found that over 50% of workers check their email multiple times an hour, with nearly 30% acknowledging that their inbox is always open. In addition, 80% of workers check their email before or after work hours, and 60% do it both before and after. Does that sound about right to you? Does that sound consistent with your experience? I suspect it does. And if so, a follow-up question. Why do we check our emails so frequently? Logically, the only reason we would have to check our emails so frequently would be if you regularly receive emails that require responses within, say, 30 to 60 minutes, right? Of course, for most of us, very few emails require such responsiveness. The problem is that most professionals have never really taken the time to clarify just what their expectations are when it comes to email responsiveness. No, for most of us, our approach to email, our strategy is directed by our lizard brain, who loves to tell us stories about what not responding right away to email might mean. Just a few examples. Right? If I don't respond to email throughout the day, then I may miss something. I'm going to fall behind. I'll lose the sale. Others will think I don't care about them. My team won't think I'm working, especially true in this work from home environment that we're operating in. In other words, there will be pain. Sadly, these stories are rarely challenged. And therefore, the default setting for most teams when it comes to email is that the best team members are the most responsive, when in reality, this is rarely true. The real workforce MVPs are typically those most immune to email or e-communication overwhelm. Men and women who have taken the time to clarify both their communication expectations as well as the expectations of those they work with and for, debunking these stories of the lizard brain. And the data from the survey I cited earlier seems to back this up. When asked, how quickly do you expect a response to your emails during the workday? 85% of those surveyed said they expected a response within the day or more frequently. But when they were then asked, how long do you wait for a response before sending a follow-up? Roughly 75% said they'd wait more than a day. Now, why would that happen? Well, it's because that same number, 75%, have never spoken with a colleague or manager about their expectations. In other words, we don't feel comfortable holding others accountable to a standard that we've never actually shared with them. And that, of course, is a good thing. But it also represents a massive opportunity to create clarity and reduce the frustration created by email communication within teams. Does that make sense? I hope so. Now, if you're not quite sure what to say or how to say it, try something like this at your next team meeting. Hey team, I'm committed to being more focused and intentional with my work this quarter. As a first step, I'm going to test some new strategies to spend less time on email and more time on deep work. The biggest change you may notice is that instead of immediately responding to your messages as they come in, I'm going to check my email just once every hour and will reply to your messages by the end of the day. If you need more immediate help from me, no problem. Just call or text me. In addition, if I haven't responded to your email by the end of the day, by all means, please follow up with me, as I may just have missed it. Pretty simple and straightforward, right? Please use this language, edit it, modify it as necessary, and begin the dialogue with your colleagues. In addition, your email signature is also another opportunity to clarify expectations, particularly with folks that you don't interact with on a regular basis. Here's what it looks like. This is actually the email signature of a breakthrough participant who put this in place shortly after watching this module. So there you have it. The second guiding principle when it comes to creating healthier email habits is to clarify expectations. The third, to put first things first. Compulsive email checking can be a hard habit to crack, but the place to start is in the morning. That's why the third guiding principle is to put first things first. In an informal study of my clients, I found that at least 50% check their email within 10 minutes of waking up in the morning, with many sheepishly confessing that they haven't even gotten out of bed before they take their first look. Needless to say, don't do that. As you've heard from me before, your email inbox is somebody else's to-do list. I want you to reclaim those first few precious hours of your day. Prepare your mind and body and get your most important work done before you start working on theirs. Now, if the idea of not checking your email upon awakening makes you anxious or worse, I get it. For many early morning emailers, diving into our inbox first thing is immensely satisfying. Not only can it make us feel like we're getting the day off to a fast start, that we're getting things done, but it also makes us feel safe. As one client put it to me, if there's an emergency I'm going to have to deal with, I'd rather know sooner than later. And yet, as that old airline public service announcement reminds us, you must have your oxygen mask on before you can begin helping others. Much like social media, reading and responding to email is an energy depleting activity. And as we learned in the lesson on daily planning, our energy is our most valuable resource, the lead domino in creating sustained success. If you start with a depleted battery, it's going to be a much longer, less productive day than were you to start fully charged. Now, when it comes to putting first things first, a few better alternatives to email include planning, exercise, reflection, prayer or meditation, reading, and I don't mean the news or social media, and or deep work. At a minimum, make a plan. The daily planning process that I've taught you takes no more than 5 to 10 minutes, but this precious space gives you a chance to identify and choose the more important work that you can and want to be doing, as opposed to simply reading and responding to email. So, principle number 3, put first things first. And finally, principle number 4, make it easy. It's funny, this last principle is often the easiest to overlook. To paraphrase author James Clear, If you want better results, play the game in an environment that favors you. Winners often win because their environment makes winning easier. So, in that spirit, we need to create an environment that makes it easier to not let our email control our day. Now, here are a few detailed best practices, specific ideas to help you do just that. Number one, close your inbox. Genius, right? I know, it's pretty obvious, but sometimes we need to state the obvious. If your inbox is open all day, you are going to be in trouble. It's like that latest issue of People magazine or Us Weekly, positioned so perfectly in the grocery store checkout line. Try as I might, I can't help but look. Close the inbox, resist the temptation. Now, building on this, best practice number two, a bit more radical but highly impactful idea. Unplug your second monitor. You know those gun buyback programs cities run to get guns off the street and, in theory, reduce violent crime? Well, if you're a leader looking to increase both the productivity and mental health of your team, I consider a second monitor buyback. Do you have a second monitor? I wouldn't be surprised if you do. Today, beautiful HD flat screens are cheaper than ever. The problem is that when you buy one of them, then you feel compelled to use it. And as I've observed, the default for most executives is to use the monitor simply to manage their email or internal messaging apps. In fact, just recently, the Wall Street Journal published an article lauding the amazing productivity gadget you didn't know you needed. Right? What a great clickbait kind of title. But in it, the author's sitting on the couch with a device that turns a laptop into a 3-monitored productivity sink pit. Just look. She's got email on one of the monitors and her instant messaging app on the other. It's just terrifying. And yet, doesn't it look like she's being productive? Fortunately, we know better. Unless you absolutely need your second monitor to get your work done, in other words, you're in graphic design, software development, corporate finance, something like that, consider unplugging that second monitor and see what it does to both your productivity and performance. All right, on to best practice number 3, turn off notifications. Again, this one may seem obvious, but the pings, the banners on both your desktop and your phone are not serving you. Turn them off. They're the siren sounds of the whirlwind. Now, in the Odyssey, that epic poem, poor Odysseus had to cover his eyes, plug his ears, and tie himself to the mast of his ship to avoid the sirens. Fortunately for us, silencing these unwanted distractions is much easier. Every one of your computer applications has an option to turn notifications off. Take them up on that offer. In fact, the only notification you really need, if at all, is maybe from your calendar to let you know that a new appointment is pending. All right, and then the final 4th best practice, reduce the noise. Here's a simple rule of thumb to live by. The only email that should make it into your inbox is email you want and need to read. The less email you receive, the easier. And remember, this is all about making it easy. The easier it is to reduce the amount of time you spend on email. If you want to reduce the noise, in other words, the unnecessary email that's making its way into your inbox, I recommend that starting today, you do one of 3 things with every email you receive. The first thing, delete and unsubscribe. Use this for any unwanted email marketing communications. Don't forget to unsubscribe. This may take an extra 30 seconds, but it's worth it in the long run. Now, a question I often get here is, how do I know if I should unsubscribe? I get it. There are lots of email newsletters that I wish I had time to read. So here's the test. If you're receiving a newsletter, but haven't made time to thoughtfully read that newsletter in the last 30 days, unsubscribe. Now, if that still gives you a massive case of FOMO, fear of missing out, then do what I do. Create a folder in your browser called Blogs to Read. Most, if not all, of these email newsletters have some website or landing page where you can go and read back issues. If you're like me, you'll rarely get back to reading these articles, but at least you haven't forgotten the source entirely. Now, for Microsoft Outlook users, they have a feature called Focused Inbox that will do a lot of this for you automatically. You can turn that on by clicking Display Settings and then checking the box Focused Inbox. All right, the second thing you can do with an email to reduce the noise in your inbox is to reply and archive. If the email received requires a reply, and the reply will take less than 5 minutes to compose and send, do it. But once you've replied to the message, don't just leave it in your inbox. Put it in an archive folder. Now, this setting is available for both Microsoft and Google email users. And what's neat about archive is that it doesn't delete the email. You can always search and find that email later, but it critically gets it out of your inbox, reducing the noise and distraction that you're seeing as new emails come through. Now, one last word about email replies. I ask people all the time about their email communication, and I have yet to hear anyone say, I wish people would send me more long, dense, detailed emails, please. Right? If the email is going to take more than 5 minutes to write, then consider picking up the phone. Some people really agonize over writing emails because they're worried about how it might come across or sound. If that's you, pick up the phone. It's a lot easier to communicate tone and intent verbally than it is via electronic communication. All right, the final option you have for any incoming email is to read, create a to-do, and then archive. Given that your email inbox is somebody else's to-do list, this of course seems fitting, right? Oftentimes an email will require a non-email action. For example, can you follow up with customer so-and-so, or remember to get your expense report complete by Friday? To make processing these kinds of emails easy, I have a daily 45-minute block of time on my calendar for Whirlwind. You can see it here. When I receive an email to do, like the examples I just mentioned, I add it to the next Whirlwind planner on my calendar and use that list as my agenda for that specific work period. This gives me the flexibility I need to account for unexpected to-dos that come via email without completely disrupting my other plans for the day. So, there you have it. A few guiding principles and some specific best practices for creating a healthier relationship with email. Before we wrap up, let me just quickly summarize. The 4 guiding principles for creating a healthier relationship with your email. Number 1, be intentional. Number 2, clarify expectations. Number 3, put first things first. And number 4, make it easy. How do you make it easy? By adopting some of these best practices. Clarify how much time you are and want to spend on email. Benchmark, measure yourself today. Create and share communication expectations with, at minimum, your manager, but ideally all of your colleagues. Don't start the day with email. Start the day with a plan, something energy giving, not energy draining. Schedule time to check your email and stick to that schedule. Close your inbox when you're not doing email. And of course, unplug your second or third or fourth monitors. Just test that out. Finally, turn off all notifications. And then, of course, reduce the noise in your inbox by doing something with every message. Create an inbox where every message that's coming through is actually important, is relevant, is useful. Now, of course, this isn't an exhaustive list. In fact, I'd love to hear more of your strategies for reducing email overwhelm. But implementing any of these ideas will help you to better manage your email-related whirlwind. Now, as a next step, I want you to test the new practices. Choose at least one of these ideas and test it out before your next coaching call. As always, if you have any questions or need any help at all, just email us at help@sandsleadership.com and we'll get back to you right away.